A few years back, my husband had a couple of missed calls and a voicemail on his cell phone from Jerry, a childhood friend. What was strange about it was the date stamp was several years in the future. He listened to the voicemail and told me the sad news that Jerry's mom had died. My husband called him back, and Jerry had no idea what he was talking about, for he had not called him and left him the message. His mother was alive and well. He became angry at my husband, stating it was not something you joke about. I listened to the voicemail myself, and his friend sounded very distraught as he told her the news. If it was a prank, he sounded convincing. We were both very confused by it. A couple days later, the same thing happened again. The missed call showing Jerry's number with a future date stamp. My husband refused to listen to the voicemail, so I did. It was Jerry. I recognized his voice. Said he didn't understand why my husband had not yet returned his call. When my husband tried to delete his call log, all would erase but those. It was super creepy. It was like he was getting calls from the future. When my daughter Catherine was 5, she started talking to an imaginary friend, several in fact. As I thought this was unhealthy, I explained to her they were like dreams, not real friends. Thus, the battle wheels began. One day during our discussion where I was telling her once again the imaginary friends were in her mind only, she insisted she could see and hear them, so they had to be real. I challenged her, stating that if they were real, why couldn't I hear them? She got frustrated at me and said they would call me to prove it. At that moment, the phone rang. I picked up the receiver, but no one answered, just silence. But I could almost feel someone on the other end. I hung up, and my daughter asked if I heard them, and I said, "Who?" She told me her friends called me. Laughing, I replied it was just a disconnected call. A few minutes went by before the phone rang again, but when I answered it, the same silence. I hung up. Then the phone rings a third time, and this time I answer with, "Who is this?" I could hear what sounded like someone whispering, but the words came too quickly for me to make anything out at first, like it was a recording on fast forward. Then several voices say at once, "Hello, Jay. Catherine asked us to call you. We are not her imagination." They start laughing, not the happy laugh, but an evil one. It felt so wrong. Freaked me out so bad, I slammed down the phone too hard, almost breaking the cradle. Having enough of this, I tell my daughter if I ever catch her talking to her imaginary friends again, she would be grounded. And I was true to my word to her dismay. It took about a year before she stopped talking about her friends. A deceased family member called me 2 days after their death. Their cell phone, which I had, was on the counter about 3 feet away from me when all of a sudden it called my cell phone. I wasn't sure what to do at first, just stared at the two phones in disbelief. I let it ring, never picking it up. A voicemail was left, but when I played it back, it was just gibberish, like too many people trying to talk at once. It was real life creepy, so I deleted it. About a month later, my landline phone rang. Their caller ID showed the deceased person's cell number was calling. Their phone was in the kitchen drawer, and I was the only one home. Besides that, the battery had to be depleted by now. This time I answered, again with the voices. There was just too many people talking for me to make out any clear words. There was this one loud male voice trying to be heard over the others, but it was being drowned out. That creepy feeling had come over me again, and I quickly hung up the phone. Immediately, I get up to check his cell phone, and there was no charge. Not even enough battery juice to turn it on. I just couldn't explain it. What made it even more mind-blowing was getting his last phone bill. And yep, it showed his cell had called mine 2 days after I lost him. I asked myself the same question every day. Was he trying to reach out to me? I kept his cell phone after that fully charged, but it never did call mine again. When I was 12 years old, my mom and I went to visit an aunt. She was an older lady who needed a cane to get about, so my mom and I would help her do chores around the house every couple of weeks. The phone rang, and with me being closest to it, I picked up the receiver. A man asked if I was Eric, and I responded, "How did you know?" It was kind of hard to hear him, for there was a lot of static. He goes on to tell me his name is Eric, and I was named after him. I knew I had been named after an uncle, but I thought he died years before I was born. But what did I know? He tells me Esther, who is my aunt, is the love of his life, and it does his heart good knowing she was being taken care of. I asked him why doesn't he come home to help her? Uncle Eric explains he is calling from a ship and cannot come home. Not anymore. I didn't understand what he meant by that statement. So I tell him I was going to get my aunt so he can talk to her. I put the phone down and go running into the kitchen where my aunt was and stated out loud, "Uncle Eric is on the phone for you." She turned white as a sheet and had this weird look on her face. My mom comes in at that moment and, seeing her aunt, demands to know what is going on. I answered nothing, just that Uncle Eric is on the phone. I'll never forget the look my mom gave me, total shock mixed with anger. She grabs my arm and says in a stern voice, "That was not funny." Now I am confused. What is the big deal? Mom pulls me with her to the phone and picks it up saying hello. She glares at me, telling me no one is on the line. I have no idea why my mom is reacting this way. I get scared and start crying. My aunt sits me down and asks what did the person on the phone say. It was kind of a weird atmosphere as I told her the whole conversation. She looked happy but scared at the same time. My mom just looked mad. She thought I made it up. My aunt starts crying softly, hugging me, before showing me a picture of my uncle in uniform. She explains he died on December 7th, 1941 at Pearl Harbor, when the ship he was on, the USS Oklahoma, had been sunk.